welcome back to another video review from the Broken Meeple, and today
what's going on here?
One of
Wait,
my
no, get off the screen! Now, go! Right. You saw nothing, okay? You saw nothing. That's old. That's the old me, or the young me. You don't want to see that, okay? Ancient times. Ugh. Ugh. Bad memories. Hi everyone, welcome to another Broken Meeple episode. I'm Luke Hector, and this is another Top 10. My Top 10 retrospective series continues with 2014. This was the year where I believe I started doing the YouTube videos in this year, or maybe it was the end of 2013, but 2014 was when I stopped doing YouTube videos for the first time. I just couldn't really get around to doing them. I was really busy. I didn't like the way the setup worked in the flat because, I mean, if you saw that horrible quality one earlier, you know, I was in a flat. It was next to a noisy road. I barely knew what I was doing. I didn't even have a decent camera. It really was a bit of a downgrade. But it was good to do. It was good fun to do. But yeah, certainly didn't look quite as professional as some of the other stuff, you know, or certainly not up to the standard that I felt, yeah, it kind of needed to be. So, 2014. Let's make a start. Looking at the list, yeah, this is another one that's changed relatively dramatically, actually. In fact, probably half of what was on the old list isn't there anymore. And the other half still remains. So, what stayed? What's come back? What's new? Let's find out. My number 10 was my number 9 last year, so it's remained pretty steady along the, you know, the current reign of games. And it's still one that I enjoy to play, preferably with only 2 or 3 players. It's kind of remaining a little bit lower down the list because it doesn't scale well when you get to 4 players. It just goes a bit too long. And it's been a while since I've got this to the table, mostly just because of time, but I still really enjoy this one and much prefer it to Portal's other version of this game. The other version is 51st State, but this one is Imperial Settlers. Still a good favourite. I've got, I think, every expansion to date in here. So I've got all the little ones as well as all the factions, and they're the ones that I prefer. I mean, more cards is well and good, but I much prefer having an additional faction. And I think there's another one coming out later this year, so even more stuff for this. Good fancy insert. You know what? I really would like to get this back to the table at some point. Whether solo or not, it's a pretty solid solo game, actually. In fact, probably quicker and easier to play it solo than it is with even like 2 players, say. But I like it how you're taking a unique civilization and you have your own special buildings that only you can build, but you've also got the communal deck that you draft from. Now, this game has deck building rules in it, like, you know, you can customize your, you know, personal deck. To be honest, I really don't see the point. I mean, maybe I might look at this if I was to create, say, my vision of a perfect deck for each of the factions, but really, it's just... ain't nobody got time for that! I don't know, I feel that's too much effort. I like the decks by just literally going, all the buildings, one big pile, shuffle it. Yeah, okay, you might not see some buildings and it might mess up some of the combos, but you've got lots of variety. It's a good laugh. Doesn't scale great at 4, but I still love it with 2 to 3 players. I think it's solid, I think it's still worth checking out. Hasn't really gone off, I think it's halfway up my top 100 as well. So Imperial Settlers, still remaining at the low end of this list, but still good for 2014. Number 10. My number 9 was my number 8 last year. Yeah, so far everything's kind of creeping down, slowly but surely down the list. So yeah, my number 10 fell off the list. We'll get onto that later. But this one is where Days of Wonder decided, you know what, we don't need to do just gateway games. We don't need to do just simple games. Let's show everyone that we can make a really thinky, you know, well, not necessarily heavy, but a very big brain-burny type Euro compared to their usual fare. I thought, oh, I don't know, they're going out of their comfort zone here. I don't know if this is what Days of Wonder should be doing, because I love Days of Wonder games for being solid gateway or family style titles. But this one knocked it out of the park. Probably one of the heaviest games they've made, I believe. I can't think of one that is heavier than this one.
Get on with it.
But it's solid with both expansions as well. In fact, for this one, 5 tribes. There we go. This is the weird anomaly where the review I did for Whims of the Sultan, the expansion of this, has so many views, it's unreal. For a little expansion to this game. Maybe it was because I went on a massive rant in it about how I just dislike having a 5th player in this game. I mean, I'm not playing this with 5 players, it's long enough with 4. But with 2 to 3, love it. I'll play it with 4, but only if the analysis paralysis player stays well away. But this is a solid, update of the Mancala mechanic, where you pick up a collection of meeples, or stuff, really, the mechanic, and you move it along. You drop a piece over every tile that you pass over, and the tile that you end up on triggers an ability of one of the now 6, originally 5, tribes of meeples that each have a special ability or scoring system. On top of that, you're, utilising genies that get you points and special abilities. And with the expansions, like I said, you've got 6 tribes now. And you even have, with the Whims of the Sultan expansion, the dreaded 5th player, but you also have these Sultan cards, which are like mini objectives you can go through during the game. So you land your meeple on the tile, you take a card from one that is visible so you can see what you're getting. And then this might get you more points during the game if you meet a certain criteria. It just opens up new scoring opportunities, adds to the variety, adds to more paths to victory. You could just spend all your time achieving those objectives and not even caring too much about which tribe you send there. It's a great expansion, but the game itself is just really cool. It's thinky, definitely brain burny. I mean, if you're indecisive in any way, you should probably stay away from this because you're going to get overwhelmed with the amount of options you have on each turn, thinking about, oh, will that score me more points? Will that score me more points? I don't know. But stellar production, as always, from Days of Wonder. Looks the business, so colourful. Granted, if you're colourblind, stay away from this game, you're going to have problems. But, otherwise, solid game. Still a little lowish down the list, mainly because it's hard to get to the table. I need to refresh my memory on some of the rules, and because it is quite a thinky game, this isn't one that I'm as keen to teach to new players, so I need to find people who have played this before. It's one of those, the ones like the Dice Tower did, where you, top 10 games not to play with noobs. This is one of those games that I'm a little bit hesitant to, I hate use the word, but to play with newer players. But still, love it to bits. Great, as always, from Days of Wonder. Number 9, 5 tribes. Or 6 tribes. I'm actually glad the way that this chart is going, because so far I don't have to reach very far in order to grab the game off the shelf. This makes a bit of a change. And we're stopping the trend of just one lower on the list, because this one is the first new debut to the list at number 8. This one is a solid game, and I actually feel slightly bad it's as low as 8 on this list. It's not because I think it's not as good or not great. This is a game that is very high in my top 100. This goes to show that with 2014, so many games that I played since 2014 ended up so high in my top 100 that this was a really hard one to rank. And I've been singing the praises of this one for ages about how underrated this game is. Everybody needs to try out Abyss. Yes, the game that gave you 5 different faces as covers, thankfully, with the same stuff inside. But most people have not even heard of this. I mean, it's not even got the title on it. I have to show it like this in order to get you to see it's Abyss. But, oh god, this is such a good game. Granted, I mean, not everyone will like it, but it's a tableau, best way I can describe it is a tableau building game. You're collecting these sea creature allies and you're using them to buy the services of these lords. And you have lords from different factions, so some are better at points, some give you money, which is in these little tiny little pearls, which are great. Some give you shenanigan abilities, etc, etc. And with these lords, you acquire locations for endgame scoring, and basically you're trying to end up with the most victory points. Of course! And I know that doesn't sound as great as that, but here's some things really going for it. Firstly, oh my god, this looks stellar. When we were doing Dice Tower Awards and all the other awards, this was the one that I put at the top for artwork, because the artwork in this is so gorgeous. It's got this under the sea type, universe with all the sea creatures and all these lords. It looks great. It's a bit like if you took the kind of like the underwater Gungan city out of Star Wars, and then just made it a bit more serious tone. You know, all those landscapes and that. It just looks so gorgeous. It's such a sublime artwork. So much that I would love to have a sequel game to this. You know, where it's in the same universe, different game, but just use that same artwork. It is. I mean, what is the guy's name? I gotta find it. Where's it? He's in there somewhere. Xavier Colette. Sorry if I get the name wrong, but you deserve credit, mate. This artwork is beautiful. But enough about the artwork. The gameplay itself is still good fun. You're drafting these allies from a row, and your opponents have the chance to buy them first, but they got to give you the money to do it. And the lords have all got these cool abilities that you can combo off with each other. There's a balancing act between how long do you go across this track to get the allies, because the ones that you don't take go into a central pool, and other players might be able to take those as well. It's a cool, very simple game, not complex at all, and the expansion, the Kraken expansion, adds a mechanic similar to the corruption mechanic in Lords of Waterdeep, where you have these black pearls, and the allies with them are great for buying lords, but the black pearls are negative points, and if you have the most, you end up with this Kraken miniature that gives you even more negatives. Fantastic expansion, use it all the time. Granted, the, what was it called, the loot deck was a bit of a misfire. I don't have to use it in any game, so I take it out, no big deal. And I hear there's another expansion for this coming out this year, so hopefully you will see Abyss reprinted so that people can finally get hold of this game, and I can't wait to see what the expansion has. I'm really excited about it. Probably one of my most anticipated expansions for this year. But seriously, Abyss, gorgeous, great gameplay, fairly simple, pretty streamlined. It's a great game, underrated, you gotta try it. And it's only my number 8. So think about that when I'm thinking of the other 7 games here. For my number 7, we return to a designer who has, for the most part, sat pretty well with me, Vital Lacerta. Not all of his games have been hits with me. I did play CO2 finally recently, and that was a bit of a dud. Wasn't a big fan of that at all. So I'm hoping that the revised version on Kickstarter will be a bit more interesting, but yeah, that was the one misfire he had. But you've heard me sing the praises of Gallerist, Vinhos, and even Lisboa to an extent. Granted, Lisboa is probably the least favourite of the 3 of them there, mainly just because of the theme, you know, I just like certain themes better. But this is what I consider to be my favourite Lacerta game. Not his best design, I think it's still the Gallerist, but this one is the one that I would choose to play in a heartbeat if you only gave me the choice of one. And that is, here we go. Come on, Automotive Revolution. This is the first game I ever played from this designer, and I was instantly hooked the first time I played it. For 2 reasons. One, the theme. Okay, the theme is you're working in a car factory making cars. That's already a cool theme. I like that. Yeah, there's other games about making cars I would like to play just because that theme seems really strong. What's it one called? V6 Kraftwerken or something? I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit too heavy for me. I'm not sure. Maybe a bit too punishing. I don't know. But I'd like to try it. It's about making cars. I'll go with it. But with Kanban, you're in a car factory making cars and dodging your boss, Sandra. She goes around the worker spaces, a bit like a neutral worker, but when she hits your department, depending on whether you play the game in nice mode or mean mode, so basically what mood would you like her in, she either gives you extra points, you know, extra credit, like, well done, you've met this criteria, or punishes you and gives you negative points because you haven't met a certain criteria. Spoiler alert, you might want to play in mean mode all the time because the point system gets a little bit unbalanced if you play in nice mode, I find. But I just play in meme mode, it's not that debilitating. But the game itself is a reasonably heavy Euro game with a busy board and a rulebook that's not perfect, I admit. But if you go online on Board Game Geek, the geek list that Vital Lacerta himself put up is a better rulebook and will help you understand the game more. And there's playthrough videos on the subject. But what I love about this is just how well the Euro mechanics integrate with this theme. You've got the board with all the different departments, and it's pretty intuitive. Yes, okay, it's a busy board, but you know to build the car you're going to need the design blueprints, then you're going to get the parts, then you're going to build it on the assembly line, then it's going to be on the track, you test it, and then you put it away. It makes sense. And you've got variable goals that you can aim for. You go to a board meeting where you say, I met this condition and got more points. You can decide whether you want to go for a particular type of car or lots of cars or barely any cars. You know, do you want to study and get your examinations done so that you're really good in departments? It's such a cool, it's just one of those themes that all sings with me, but it's so well integrated into the mechanics as well. I just love it. You can make jokes about Sandra all day long. It looks the business. It's very colourful and well produced, despite the fact that I'll agree it's a busy board and can put people off. Another one of those games that I'm a little bit hesitant to teach new players unless I know they handle this type of Euro game. And it certainly does require a good teacher because you've got to teach this in a certain way, otherwise you're going to overwhelm the other players. But it's a solid game. My personal favourite from Lacerta, even if I wouldn't necessarily say it was his most streamlined of design. But it was one of the first ones out of the boat, so, you know, you learn with experience. So, Kanban, wordy, number 7. From a number 6, we take a look at one that has dropped since last year. This was my number 2. Still in my top 10. I mean, come on, that still makes it a good game, but it was my second favourite before. And it's dropped a little bit, mainly because some games have come out I preferred to this. And like I say, second of the year and now 6. That just shows what new, other great games from this year I played. But also because this one's a bit more group dependent. You know, sometimes I'll get a group where I'm just having a time of my life. And then sometimes I'll get a group where they're a bit dry, they don't want to roleplay it enough, and it's just, it falls a little bit short. But Sheriff of Nottingham is still a fantastic bluffing social deduction game. It's just, yeah, I know, Dice Tower Network and Dice Tower Essentials, whatever. But I still love this. You know, I've got the expansion Merry Men in this. I did a review on it. You can go check it out. And I thought that expansion was one of the best expansions I've seen for a while. It adds multiple modules, all of which work. 6 players, even 6 players with this works fine. But the new incentives to lie with the little objective cards you get, the laws, the black market, the merry men themselves, there's now even more reasons to lie in this game. So if you thought, no, the only way you ever win is to get the, to be honest all the time. Okay, yeah, you can still do well by that, and that's one thing I like. You don't have to lie. But now you got a lot of reasons to lie. Lots of temptation, and lots of cool chances to really pull off some shenanigans with the sheriff. The deputies with 6 players works pretty well as well. You know, you have 2 deputies talking with each other when all the other players are, sending in their bags. Although I kind of recommend if you're going to use 6 players, you might want to get a sand timer or use your phone because the game might go a bit too long. In fact, the rulebook even suggests use a timer. And to be honest, I agree. There's a companion app that with Sheriff of Nottingham that gives you ambient music and sets a timer. I recommend you download that. I think it's free and it works great with this. But Sheriff of Nottingham's so much fun, just role-playing it and getting into the theme, everyone giving silly voices or acting like weird sheriffs. I love playing the new character from the expansion. It's like an old lady or something, and I like doing it in a sort of Monty Python-esque voice.
We've got some lovely filth down here. Oh, how'd you do?
It's some weird old hag type voice with a squeaky voice, and I love playing Sheriff doing that voice for most of the game. It just creates some good moments, and other people have done some great impressions and stuff like that as well. Sheriff can be a whole lot of fun. I still love it, but it is group dependent. So it has dropped a little bit, mainly because it's hard to get that perfect group that you need. You don't need the most perfect group for it, but don't play this with people who are just going to not get into the theme or treat it as dry or don't like doing bribery. I love doing the bribes. I like saying, come on, $2, let them open that. But then there are some people out there who just refuse to give you a bribe. They will literally just give you the bag and say, do what you like. Well, okay, do what you like. Don't play this game with those people. Those boring people. Seriously, get into the theme, bribe, have fun. This is a great game. Number 6, Sheriff of Nottingham. My number 5 has dropped a bit on my top 100 since I recorded it, but I still think this is one of the best, most streamlined, in fact it might even be my favourite, 2-player abstract game. I'll need to check the list again, but yeah, there's not many 2-player abstracts in the top 25 games of my, my collection. But this one, again, I will confess, Dice Tower Essentials. But this one is just, in fact, I'm going to have to shift the chair a bit because it's the only way I'm going to get it. There we go. Here we are. Let's just move that one out the way. Whoop, here we go. Aha. Oh god, I have to pick up Jaipur in a minute, but there we go. Onitama. Onitama is one of the most streamlined two-player abstract games out there. And this scratches that, you know, kind of chess itch that I get, because I used to play chess a lot. I love the game. Haven't played it in a long time, but you know, great game. Onitama is kind of like a simplified chess. You still have a grid and you move these pieces a bit like chess, but you have 5 cards that stipulate the movement for everything. Just 5 cards out of, what have I got now, like 30 odd cards now or something stupid with the expansion. And these cards, you have 2 in front of you and 1 in the middle. You select a card to move a piece, you swap it with the one in the middle, and then these are your 2 options next turn. So the card that you give, your opponent's going to use eventually. So did you just give your opponent the card they needed to win? Are you going to hold on to a card for ages because you know it's going to benefit the opponent greatly and hope he gives you a particular card you need? It's such a great back and forth. The rules can be taught in less than 2 minutes flat. You can play the game in anything between 5 to 15 minutes because, you know, you get some people who make a mistake and get beat, but then you'll have 2 people that are like, come on, I can beat you, you know, Battle of the Mind Titans. And you'd think for something this simple that it wouldn't cause a lot of brain burn, but believe me, there are times when it's like, oh my god, if I move him, he's going to move there. I've made a mistake, no! And well produced, comes in a weird sized box, I would admit, you know, and the expansion came in a similar box, not quite sure why it had to do that, and probably a bit overpriced for what it was, you know, just a bunch more cards, so you could have literally just given me a polythene bag with some cards and I'd have been happy for like £3. Oh well, that's smart. That's a board game publishing for you, I guess. But Onitama still remains a great 2-player abstract game, and if you want something simple just for you and maybe your spouse who's a complete new to gamers or something, then I highly recommend this. This is one that I'm actually going to try and bring out for my, I suppose I can call her girlfriend at this point, someone I'm dating at the moment, but this is one I'm going to bring out with her very soon. She already took quite well to Jaipur, and what was the other one? And Hanamikoji took very well to those 2. This is my next try. See if she likes this one. But I reckon you will, because it's a solid game at my number 5. New to the list, great one for 2014. Looking at what's remaining for the list, we have 2 more new games and 2 that were on the previous list. I'll leave you to guess what the 2 on the previous list were. But this is the first of the new games, and I actually played this shortly after I did that list. So it's a shame that this one didn't make it, but there was no denying that this was going to be high on this list. I was just thinking, oh my god, so many great games. Where do I put these ones? This is probably one of my favourite, there's a couple of more favourite. Alright, well, we're talking my top 5 deck building games. And unlike most deck builders, it doesn't require a million hours to set it up. It doesn't require £1 million to buy them all. It's nice and compact. Valley of the Kings. This is the last rights box because I've got everything for this now. I've got 3 games. I don't bother sleeving it. I don't think it's necessary. The cards are good quality. And everything fits in this tiny little box. Granted, I have removed the original starter cards and put them in my spares box because the last rights expansion gave you a new set of starter cards which are infinitely better than the ones from the original version, and so I only ever used them. So I took those out, put them in the spares box. Everything now fits reasonably. I mean, it's not the most flush on top, but everything's on there. It's all there. Bunch of cards, tightly packed. Oh god, yeah, some of it might slide off, but yeah, tightly packed. It's just a solid production, solid game. Valley of the Kings is a small deck builder where you are trying to get, artifacts into your, into your tomb. And the idea with this is that you're doing this via deck building, so you buy these cards from a pyramid that crumbles down and changes as you buy the cards, and they all have special abilities. So you get to trigger all the special abilities or use them for money, so it's multi-use cards. I love that concept in games. But with this, it's a bit different, because most deck builders, you score for the cards in your deck. They usually have a points value. Here, you don't. You have to do a different action called Entomb to put the cards from your deck into your tomb. That is the only way they score points, and it's based on sets for colours. So there's a set for 3 of one colour, set for 4 of another colour, and it's is it called the Fibonacci scale, something like that, in the way they score. So you get the set of 7, it's 49, that kind of thing. So it's one of those like cool concepts that you have to make this choice. How long do I keep the cards in my deck to use the cool abilities and their money value versus when I get them in the tomb? You've got the pyramid and the deck of cards, which is the timer for the game, and subject to a couple of other conditions. But as that deck starts running out, you've got to think, when's the best time I should start actually entombing cards? Can I entomb cards? You get 1 a turn for free, but if you want to do it fast, you're going to need other cards that help you do it. Did you buy enough of them? Or did you focus on something else? In which case, should you entomb quickly? Or should you start entombing maybe late in the game when you feel like you can do a speed run of it? It's such a cool game. And as paralysis players stay away, because there's a lot of abilities with this that you've got to hone in on, there is a bit of text on the cards. But Valley of the Kings just has this unique concept to it, where this entombing thing, I don't think I've seen it in any other game. Let me know in the comments if there is a deck building game that uses this concept where you've got to get the cards out of your deck into another pile in order to score them, because I just think that's so cool. It's something different. The theme in this is, it fits, it works, but, you don't need to be interested in Egyptian lore or anything like that to get the cards or play this. But even without all the expansions, you've still got, some decent abilities to go for. But now, with expansions, not only can I play this solo, but I can also chop and change which sets I put in the game. And each time I do that, I end up with a different game. Don't play this with 4 players, it just goes on too long, but makes for a fantastic 2 or 3 player game. Works well solo. It's a keeper, and, well, it doesn't exactly take up a lot of space on my shelf, does it? Compact and great. This should have been in my top 10 of 14 before. It just narrowly missed the cut for when I got it played. But it's here now. My number, what are we on? 4, Valley of the Kings. Now we're going back to that trend of shifting by 1, except this one is shifted up by 1. It's actually gone up in my appreciation. It might have even gone higher had the expansion for this come out sooner and I got a chance to try it. Unfortunately, I'm still waiting for delivery on it because it's called Tea and Trade, and it bumps the player count of this one from 2, because it's normally only a solo or 2 player game, to 3. This is probably my favourite game, well, possibly my favourite, maybe Caverna, I'm not sure. It's fighting for my top place from Uri Rosenberg. Fields of Arle. Yes, I like heavy games, thank you very much. This is kind of like Uri Rosenberg's greatest hits, that's kind of what I call it. If you thought Caverna had a lot of stuff you could do, woo, try this one. If you thought that there was it was all about the farming and theme in Agricola, woo, try this one. This one kind of takes elements of all these other games and shoves it into one box. And normally it's only a solo or 2 player game, and to be honest, this one I have played way more solo than I have 2 player. And it's such a cool game. You've got loads of options you can do. Do I build buildings? Do I go trade with other villages to get food and points that way? Do I just harvest a ton of minerals? Do I clear this my farmland of peat, I think it's called? Do you dehydrate the moors? Because you're kind of like on a coastal area of Germany, I believe, like Arles itself. I can't remember the history of it, but it's got a cool, interesting blurb in the rulebook. Check it out. But oh, it's one of those sandbox style Euros. And if you've kept up with my videos, you know I love sandbox style games. Pursuit of Happiness and spoiler alert, Pulsar 2849. That review will come out soon, if not before or after this video. We'll have to see. But it's a great experience with having perfect freedom over what you fancy doing. And it's a point salad, so everything's worth points. And the scores in this are super tight. You can win this by half a point. I am not joking here, that has happened. It could literally just be that one piece of wood that you have that was worth half a point, got you the game. It can be so down to the wire. It's a traditional worker placement game where you put workers out and you do actions, get resources, get farm animals, get things on your farm, dehydrate it, go trade, build vehicles, get buildings. It's got loads of different things in it. But one thing I love in particular is the tools. In here, you have the different spaces, but you can upgrade the spaces by improving the tools. And if you upgrade the tools, it means that when you go there again, you get additional bonuses or additional resources for that space. That I really like, and I don't see that in a lot of these worker placement games with resource management these days. Why not? It's a cool concept. I want to see it in more, Euro games, people. Get on it. But it works really well, and the main thing that's held me from getting it to the table more often is the fact that it is maximum 2 players. There are people I know who want to learn this. So do their spouses. Which means that I either have to sit out and teach them both the game, or it's been difficult for me to get it to the table with time and everything. Tea and Trade, as I mentioned earlier though, is the expansion that has just come out for it. Adds a few new elements. I can take it or leave it. We'll see if they're any good or not. Not sure if I'll do a full... Actually, no, I will be doing a review on it. Don't know if it'll be video or written. We'll have to see. But certainly the main thing I'm looking forward to though is that it ups the player count to 3. I can teach them the game. We can have a 3 player experiences. Will it go too long? Who knows? But I reckon it will still be a good laugh. Fields of Arle, possibly my favourite Uri Rosenberg game, alongside maybe Caverna would be my mate. It's up there. It's, which one do I prefer? I love them both. Maybe this could actually eclipse Caverna easily and dominate if the 3 player expansion is that good. We'll find out soon. But for now, it's still my number 3 on this list. Quality. Quality. For my number 2, again, we've shifted up 1 place. You're going to have to make do with pictures though, because I really don't want to get that... I don't know, I'll try and get it, okay? It's part of a giant vault case. This was my number 3 last time, and it's crept up to number 2. Still love it. This is my favourite game from this franchise. And it was one of the, probably only the second one to come out in this franchise, but bear with me. This is heavy, okay? Hurry! There you go. Oh God, this is gonna hurt. Oh Jesus, oh God. Come on, come on. All those muscles, all that time at the gym. Come on. What? Jesus Christ. Here we go. Oh God almighty. See this? This is, I'm gonna put this up in a minute. This is my legendary vault. Okay, I got this from Optical Power, I believe, Laser Rocks. They did this whole thing for me, and yes, it is heavy. I do not take this to game clubs, but here it's perfect because what it stores is Alien Legendary. Alien Legendary is still my favourite of the Legendary franchise, just pipping above Marvel Legendary for me. Because with this, I love the Alien universe. I like Predator as well, but I find Aliens to be more enjoyable. But this one, Legendary Encounters Alien, to be more precise, really took that Alien theme and made it work. It's got one of the best ways you can die in any game, chest bursting. It has a card where if you get hit by a face hugger, you put the card in your discard pile, and as you go through the game, as soon as you draw it for any reason, and then you die. I've never seen such a more thematic way to get axed off in a deck building game. And deck builders are one that are, they're difficult to do thematically well. They always have some, very abstracted issue. But this one just does a solid job. You've got hidden movement for the aliens, so you don't know what the cards are until you flip them over and scan them. So it's a bit like having that scanner in front of you. It's like, they're coming out of the walls! And then all the aliens are cool. You've got different scenarios based on the movies. The expansion added 2 unique scenarios that were based on just basic, different storylines. You can make the game as hard as you like with tailoring how the soldiers and drones are. It's just, really love this one. And I apologise if there's a little bit of noise outside. But yeah, it's just such a good one. Such a good thematic deck builder. And it's still a favourite of mine to play. I occasionally bring it out solo, or I still like to play it out with 2, maybe 3 players. 4 and 5, now and again. I think 3 players is a good sweet spot for it. But even solo, just great theme, really brings out that good alien lore. It's probably, the artwork is high, it has its highs and lows, but it's probably one of the better ones for art out of the Encounter series, because let's face it, Firefly, bleh, how bad was that one. But I really enjoy this one. Legendary Encounters Alien was my 3, now my 2. So what's my new top? New debut, mind, because this is the second game that was on the previous list. What's new and could hit number 1? Before I get on to my number one, I apologise if you can hear the occasional noise outside. Somebody is setting off fireworks, I think, a long way away. Middle of February, why would you set off fireworks? I don't know. But the show must go on. Got a busy schedule. So, with this one, this is a new debut to the list. Yeah, my number one's not even on the list anymore. We'll get onto that in a minute. But whoa, this one. Ever since I started playing it, it was like a 10 out of 10 game for me. It's so good. It is probably my favourite social deduction game of all time. It just works brilliantly. And I think it was ages before it came to the UK that I could actually get to play it. And when I played it, I was sold. So much so that the recent Kickstarter edition, like the expansion I've got for it, has now given me a new box, new cards, new tiles, new rolls. It's just so solid. You haven't guessed it by now? It is the new Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. This is the expansion box Undercover Allies, and it just arrived in the post. I have now chucked away the old box, which is still in the bin down there actually. It was old and battered, it was getting worn, and I'm sure this will as well over time, because I played it that much. It was getting taken to game nights, we played multiple games of it, people love it, it's great. This now has a box that can hold all the expansion content. I've got Kickstarter promos, I've got the additional add-ons from the Kickstarter. It's now a fully complete Deception and Murder Hong Kong experience. This takes that similar mechanic from Mysterium, where you have the good guys having a player who can't talk, but is giving out clues. A murderer has committed a crime and they have cards, everybody has cards in front of them, blue and red, for murder weapon and evidence left at the scene respectively. Each person has a role, it's team versus team. The good guys are trying to find out who the murderer is, the murderer and possibly his accomplice are trying to lead them astray and get off scot-free. Like in other games like The Resistance, you've got additional roles that change things up, like the witness who knows the bad guys but must stay hidden, otherwise, you know, they can get axed off and the game ends. The expansion now includes new roles like a lab technician, a clever accomplice, you know, the protective detail for the witness. It's now got so much content, so much variety, and the extra cards have now just uplifted this like crazy. Because you tended to see the same cards pop up in most games originally, now I've got so many cards, all the games are going to be different, and I can't wait to try out the new stuff. But this one, the social deduction aspect of this is so great. It's one of those rare occasions where I actually don't mind if I'm one of the good guys. Because you play a deduction game, trying to figure out from the clues, how did this crime commit? How did he use the spanner and leave some steam buns at the scene? Or was it this guy who used a gun, shot him? Could that be the serious wound? But what did he leave? I mean, what did he leave? The sorry note? Did he leave some tea leaves? You know, what's it link? And everyone's accusing each other. You've got the 30-second time rounds, as I like to do it, where you give out your sort of solo spiel as who you think's done it. Leads to some great dark moments where people are trying to describe how somebody might have killed someone by doing this and this, you know. It's like, brings out your dark side, I can tell you. But this is one that I will just watch and teach, or even teach loads of people at the same time. One of my favourite experiences was that I was the forensic scientist and I taught the maximum number of players. I think it was like 11 other players or something with the base set, and I taught all of them brand new. None of them had played the game before. And I gave them the clues, sat back, and just laughed my head off as I listened to everybody going off on tangents, coming up with their reasons for murders. It works so well, and this was with 11 new people. It's not often you can get a game where you can teach that many new people and still have a great time. This one is just so solid. It has completely blown away my favourite social deduction game from before. It's just completely annihilated the competition on this list. It was hard to rank my top 5, but I just can't deny it. Deception and Murder in Hong Kong rarely ever hits a misfire for me. Love it. Love the roles. Love the concept. It's a simple concept, but it just works. It's hard to put your finger on exactly why when you think of other social deduction games, but people enjoy doing the deduction. People like the theme, even if it is a bit dark. You know, I love being a forensic particularly. I love that stressful role, but then I love being the murderer and staying hidden. I even like being a normal investigator. Granted, it's probably my weaker role of the rest. You know, I prefer to be something with a quirk, but at least I get to play a cool little deduction game. It's not just shouting for shouting's sake. There is some logical thought process in this. Great game. Love it. New number 1, Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. That's it for 2014. You can see that the list changed quite dramatically, although we're going to see that it changed a bit more dramatically for slightly more dramatically for the 2013 list when we get onto that. But for now, let's quickly, and I mean quickly this time because last time I went on a bit too long with these, let's go over some honourable mentions and why some others dropped off the list. So honourable mentions, and I'm not going to put pictures up for all of these because it will take me forever to edit this video. But ones that almost made the list, that weren't on the list last time. Splendor, great game, great gateway game, works great with families, works great with my parents. Just missed the list, top 15 easily, but there's just so many good games to choose from. Castles of Mad King Ludwig, behind me there. Whoop, can you see it? Solid game, bit hard to remember the rules to it also with the setup in that, and can cause some AP, and with the expansion with moats it gets a little bit more complex, so still probably top 15, probably more closer to 15, and it's still a great fun game. It's just a little bit unwieldy to get to the table every now and again, plus it's a huge table hog, but still enjoy it when it does come out. I just might need to brush up on the rules a bit because it has been a while. Spyfall, another cool social deduction game, but again, very group dependent, and some people struggle with the whole, I gotta be hidden, and what questions have I got to ask, so it can fall dry every now and again. Still probably a top 15 game though, still really enjoy it. Deus, just Deus. That one is, it's down there, hang on, I can get that off the shelf actually. Whoop, there you go. Deus is a relatively new game in my collection actually. It's where you build card combos with, different sets, and you place buildings and stuff on a map. It's abstracted, the theme is pretty much bone dry, but what's cool is that when you use a card, it triggers an effect. And then if you use another card from the same set, you trigger every single card in that column. So you're either diversifying into lots of different things, or you're building up one particular set so well that when you trigger it, it generates loads of stuff for you. It's a neat game, pretty abstracted, but very simple to play, and the Egypt expansion adds even more variety, because now I've got 2 different sets of cards for each colour, and I can mix and match to my heart's content. It's an underrated game in my opinion. I got it only recently, so I couldn't really put it on my underrated games list. Probably might have made that list actually, because I feel it needs a bit more love, and it's flown under the radar for many. And finally for, let's see, the last one, probably Lagranja. Yeah, Lagranja, it's still on my collection, although I don't know how much longer for, because Lagranja it's an interesting resource management game, and it has multi-use cards, which is probably the main reason I've still got it. In fact, let me just grab it quick, because I bet most people haven't even heard of this. Yeah, Lagranja. It's been ages since I've played it though. And one thing that puts me off it slightly, this is probably a top 20 game of the year for me, is as much as I love the multi-use cards, they are my favourite aspect, and I like the resource management. What puts me off with this though is the way the market system works. You're putting these little cylinders out on a grid map, and you're sort of fighting off other players. It's a little bit mean and punishing at times, and it doesn't feel that thematic. It feels more like, the resource management is taking off like some Uri Rosenberg tropes. The multi-use cards is borrowing off other things, the special powers and that. And that map feels like something you'd expect out of a Stefan Feld game. And he's not my favourite designer of games generally. So it's slightly moving down. I still give it good mention because a lot of this game is great. But that market is starting to put me off, and I don't know how much longer I can hold on to this. I might need to get it to the table again just to see if I still want to keep it in my collection. It's pretty solid, but that market is becoming a bit of a put-off for me, and we'll have to see whether it will stand the test of time. So, very quickly now then, lastly, the 5 games that fell off, and this one I will provide pictures for unless I've got the game. The lowest one on here, Alchemist. I don't own this one anymore. It's a very heavy deduction game where you're mixing potions and doing alchemy stuff, and you're trying to figure out which ingredients and which potions you need for a particular thing. I forget the exact plot of it. But this one I sold off because it was just too heavy. I liked it. It was great. You had this heavy deduction game and then this worker placement thing on the side, but you had to use the app for it, and the app's cool, but if you didn't, it was fiddly as all get out. But it had a long setup, it had these fiddly boards that you used in order to record progress. It was a massive brain burner, and teaching this to new players was just a nightmare. Still a cool game, but too unwieldy. too heavy, too unwieldy to get to the table often enough that I eventually got rid of it. But it was my number 10 last time. My number 7 was Imperial Assault. It's an enjoyable game, but I'll only really play this now if it's the 2-player skirmish mode. That's the best thing about it. And even then, you'd have to collect quite a few of the extra packs in order to get all the miniatures and that. The campaign was good fun, but dungeon crawls are just kind of phasing out for me at the moment because they all seem to follow the same tropes. Guys go into a dungeon, here's some map tiles, scenario takes 2 hours when it really should only take half an hour if you were lucky, if it was being nice. And the plot seemed a little bit linear, there was not a huge amount you could vary up. And I don't know, it's still good fun, the campaign. But after I played through it, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm done with a lot of dungeon crawls for a bit. And so I couldn't really put this one on the list just for the 2-player skirmish game. Number 6, Dice Masters. This was good fun for a while, but 2 things put me off this one now. Firstly, the collectability. It's just too much. I'm not a fan of the collectible card game style format. Pay money and get booster packs and hope you get the cards you want. But if you have some of those self-contained sets, it's a pretty sweet game. And another thing that put me off it though was tournament format. The only way I was getting this game played was to play with a group of people who were mostly playing it in tournament settings. I hate playing games in tournament settings now. I mean, I have done well in Netrunner tournaments in the past, and I have been to tournament games before for either CCG, LCGs, and I was a dab hand at Star Wars Decipher in my young group. I was very good at that. I was winning tournaments left and right. But recently now, I just don't like going to tournaments for games. I feel that there's always somebody who takes it too seriously when you're in a tournament, because there's grandeur and a prize or something on the line. So people don't seem to be having as much fun. You can't just get into it and have a laugh. No, you've got to play super serious, and you get one thing wrong or you accidentally nudge a piece over, people will hound you for ages because it's like, oh, you just cheated or something like that. And it's like, get over it, mate. It's only a game, as I keep saying. This isn't something that happened to me personally, but I have seen this happen before in actual crowded areas. So, yeah, I just don't go for tournaments anymore. And Dice Masters was pretty much just playing with people who were involved in tournaments. So it was all super serious and the exact same super rares in every deck, no matter how unthematic it was. I just wanted to stick thematic teams together and see how they did. But no, they just wanted the same old cards, same old super powerful nonsense. Tournament win. Boring. Don't like it. Don't like tournament play. Ha! And let's see, and 2 more. Number 5 was Boria. Boria is one of my sort of better picks for bag building. Coffee Roaster is still my favourite, and I still really like automobiles. Boria was what I preferred to Orleans. They both feel quite similar, except one's got more of a map aspect and has the development tracks, although Orleans has also tracks that you level up. Mainly, I think Boria just had that map aspect, which I preferred, and the unique factions. Orleans I just felt was a bit too generic medieval for my liking. But even then, Boria is starting to drop a bit for me, because again, it's not the simplest game to teach, there's a fair bit to it. It's got, a lot to deal with, it's super dry. It's on my shelf. I don't know how much longer for though. I kind of have to think about it. I wanted to get the expansion, but I was too late, delayed too long, and now I can't get it for love nor money. So, will I be hanging on to it much longer? I don't know. We'll have to see on that one. And then finally, oh my god, the biggest one. This deserves an honourable mention because I still like it. It would probably be a top 15 game. But I no longer have this one. I'll get into this in a minute. Oh, here we go. One Night Ultimate Werewolf. This was my number 1 last time. My number 1. And now, not even on the list. Probably a top 15 game though. I still really enjoy the One Night series. But group dependency is a bit of a problem with this one because teaching it to new players, I'm forced to put in the boring roles and they're just not that fun. Now I know some people who will play this with me, but a lot of people I know are starting to phase out of the One Night series. We still enjoy playing it now and again, but I'm just not seeing it brought to game night. I haven't put it in the bag for a while, and I feel like they're kind of jumping the shark with some of the versions. I mean, I still prefer Daybreak as my favourite version because the expanded roles are interesting and it's still not too complex. The Vampire one just seems really weird with that, the whole sort of placement style thing with it and the tokens. And I do have One Night Alien on here, but even then that has some somewhat unbalanced roles and is a bit harder for new players to get into, especially with all the random effects that happen. It's still good, I still like it, but it's just dropped quite a lot, especially when I played a lot of those other games like Onitama and Valley of the Kings, and, you know, what else was new? Oh, I need to get a better memory. Abyss, Kanban, Onitama, Valley of the Kings, Deception in Hong Kong. I mean, Deception in Hong Kong obliterates this game for me on a social deduction level. It's still solid, still really enjoy it, but it's just kind of phasing out, you know. One Night Werewolf is still great, but I've also got Werewords on here, which is kind of possibly overtaking it as my preferred game, because Werewords takes 20 questions and gives it that whole One Night Werewolf feel. But it's simpler to teach, people understand what 20 questions is, you can still have varied roles. There's a Kickstarter deluxe version of this coming out with more roles and stuff. Looking forward to checking it out. But yeah, it's just gone down the list and it's the biggest drop, but I still enjoy it. Just not enough to make my top 10 anymore. So that's it. 2014. Quite a change from the last time, eh? And quite an upgrade in video quality, I hope, you know, compared to what I was doing back then. We got one more year to do. 2013. My first year I ever started blogging. My first written review in the summer, and then at the end of the year I gave a top 10. And they're pretty solid games. I mean, I would play, I believe... Yeah, I would play every game that I put in my top 10 last time, you know, although some will have dropped off quite dramatically. But there's at least 5... Yep, there's 5 games to... No, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... No, 6 remain on the list, but they've chopped and changed quite dramatically. And 4 are new to the list since then. What are they of? I'll leave you to guess. Go back and watch the... or listen, I think it was a podcast that did it. My top 10 of 2013, and see if you can guess them ahead of time. But for now, close the book for a bit. We'll get on to my top 10 of 2013 at some point soon. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed this video. We'll get on to that top 10 eventually. So, from here at the Broken Meeple, remember, after everything that I've said, whether you like these games or not, they're still only games. So don't take it too seriously, okay? See you next time, guys. Have a good evening.